Hi everyone. This is Amir. I'm your host for today. I take care of branding and communications at Designhill, and I usually host the panel discussions here. I hope everybody is keeping safe today. And today I would like to welcome all our panelists, and we are discussing podcast tips and strategies for beginners that grow your audience and income. And I'm sure this is a pretty interesting topic for all the small businesses and established and scaled up businesses who wish to explore this new medium and encash its early growth and advantages. So today's event is brought to you by Designhill, world's leading creative marketplace that caters to the creative needs of businesses and individuals who wish to source high quality designs from professional designers all across the world. Though it's a print on demand platform that we have added on Designhill as well, it's called Print Shop, where you can source 50 plus unique products created by international artists across the globe. And we have a robust community of more than 200K artists which are onboarded on Designhill. So you'll find a lot of varieties there on Print Shop as well. Moving ahead, let me introduce our speakers for today. We have with us Jana Lul Godi. I'm sorry if I pronounce the name incorrectly. I'm sure the speakers would correct me eventually when I do the introduction part. So she's an international success and business coach who teaches female entrepreneurs how to rapidly launch and scale their online businesses. Drawing from her postgraduate studies in business and nearly 2 decades of experience as a serial entrepreneur. So she has been able to help her clients get to 40K months, 10x the sales in half the time and more. Please go ahead and say hi to the audience.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's Diana. You can call me Dee, and I'm very excited to kick off this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. And also with us is Mark Askowitz. He's a serial entrepreneur who has built several global successful businesses since he quit his real job in 2005. Bill, as UK's podcast expert, Mark is the CEO and co-founder of Rebel Based Media, a podcast tech and strategy company that owns Captivate.fm, productivity podcast websites, Podcast Success Academy, and Rebel Based Studios, and is well known as an insightful, thought-provoking, and actionable podcast industry keynote speaker. He's he's widely approachable Brit, Star Wars slash DC comic geek, and believes that good business starts with being good to people. I'm sure we'll have a lot to learn from Mark today, particularly about the technical aspects of podcast, which a lot of people have asked us about. So, Mark, please go ahead.
Hello there. Did I write that? That was wonderful. Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm Mark. I run primarily Captivate.fm, which is the world's only growth-oriented podcast hosting platform, and I work in podcasting every single day. So I've seen a lot of different things. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here today, Mark. And also with us is Mark Hayward. Mark is an ex-Big Four consultant in tech technology, specializing in global mobility. He's a business mentor and leadership coach and helps clients to turn an idea into a successful and sustainable business. He's also accredited leadership coach and helps industry leaders manage change in their business. The fundamentals of leadership are a part of the program, and he assists in develop great leaders. He's a creator and the host of business podcast called Absolute Business Mindset. He interviews entrepreneurs, business owners, authors, and industry leaders who share their story of success. He also runs a podcast training program where he teaches people the importance of the story, refining the idea, and how to publish and plan an episode. So, Mark, please go ahead.
Hello there. Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot for the invite. Looking forward to today.
So with us is Michael Sherlock. Michael is dedicated to creating positive, productive, and profitable workspaces and helping individuals and businesses unlock their ultimate potential. So before launching her global training company, Shock Your Potential, Michael was vice president of US sales for two multinational medical device companies responsible for the net revenue exceeding $75 million and as many as 500 employees at that time. In 2020, she released the Shock Your Potential app, an on-demand training tool for leadership and sales professionals, and was chosen as ranked 12th of the top female entrepreneurs to watch in 2020 by EnterpriseLeague.com. Please go ahead, Michael.
Hello, thank you for having me a part of the panel. I'm very excited to be here today.
Okay, thank you for having you today. And with us finally is Tim Krotiris. Tim is an entrepreneur with a proven track record of building companies. He has built successful companies for over 20 years in industries such as health, manufacturing, marketing, and digital advertising. So people here from different backgrounds and industries will have a lot of to catch up here today from the Tim. In 2015, he found Philotimo Global, a growth consulting designed to systematically, execute rapid growth and profitable strategies for businesses in a number of sectors. In the past 3 years, the business has consulted in both specific projects and ongoing performance retainers with over 100 different companies in 35 industries. Tim also heads up Backable, an online work network built to support SME owners and entrepreneurs, giving them access to Philotimo property tools and strategies to assess in business growth and network building and opportunity creations. So Backable revolves around an invite-only business group, weekly Zoom strategy meetings, and Backable podcast, a top 10 podcast in the entrepreneurial category on Apple Podcast. That's a wonderful achievement. So Tim, please go ahead.
Thanks for having me, Ahmed. Great to be here with Designhill, and actually we're having with all these guys. It looks like it's going to be a really fun chat. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So we have all cheers goes to our team to put up such a great panelist, and thank you for all of you to take out a time at the same time frame so that all our audience can watch you and listen to you and take insightful things from this event today. So great to have you. And before we start this session, here's the big announcement. We are giving away certificates to all the attendees who would stick till the end of the session. You just can't miss on this chance so stay tuned till the end. Also, you can take a screenshot of this event, post it on your Twitter handles using hashtag Designhill events, tag at DesignhillDH, and all our speakers whose Twitter handles are in the chat section. And one lucky winner will have a chance to win print shop gift card worth $50, where you can buy yourself a hoodie or t-shirt on more than 50 plus unique products and customized products as well. Also, we have with us sharing an exclusive coupon code with everyone at the end of this session, using which you can avail 15% discount on Designhill contest services, where you can source high quality designs to build your brand. So stay tuned before we start this session, and let's take a quick look at what Designhill is all about.
Looking to get your boss to remember your name? Head to the world's #1 creative marketplace, Designhill.
When my company promoted me to head up our latest real estate development project, I was excited, then anxious, then petrified. How was I going to hire the team, get the designs completed, and design beautiful presentation materials on our lean budget while impressing my bosses, some of whom are still learning my name?
Good job, Mitch.
My name's Lawrence. That's why I went to Designhill and got the design help I needed that fit within my company's brand guidelines. The process was simple. Designhill's design contest ensured I'd get a ton of results I'd love. Start by picking a number of designs that inspire you. This one's good, and that one. This one speaks to me. Then share some information about the project. Lastly, pick a package that fits your budget. Do you just want a logo, or do you want it all? Then, boom. I got more than 60 custom design options to choose from, as well as all the other graphic design assets I wanted. And it's all backed by Designhill's 100% money-back guarantee. If I don't find a design I like, I get my money back. You can't lose. Now I have what I need to make a splash at my meetings, with everything from business cards, pamphlets, posters, and more. It's real.
Let the world know it's real and build your brand with Designhill.
So welcome back, everybody. And I hope you have got an idea what we do here at Designhill. There are a lot of more things to catch up meanwhile we conduct this event. And I would like to take the few questions that we have received during the promotion of this event, which are very important questions. And then I would request everybody who's attending this event to post your questions in the questions section here. And after the mid-roll break, we'll take questions from each and everybody, and we'll ask the specific audience whom you want to address those questions. And I would request people who are posting questions, if you have that question to the specific panelist who is present here, please name that panelist in your question as well. So starting ahead, let me take this question to Tim first. And my question here is, nowadays we have numerous options to connect with target audience, but podcast being one of them is growing exponentially. So how can podcast benefit a business, brand, or a project, and why should businesses use this avenue at all?
Well, thanks, Ahmed. And I think I can only speak personally from why we've done it and sort of as part of our consulting group is I think it has to be part of your marketing mix. It makes sense for a type of business, a type of personality, a type of person. It's not saying that anyone can do it, but when we've got limited resources and traction, we want to do something that gives us that exponential, I guess, growth in the area that we want to improve. And we found for our business particularly, podcasting, whilst to be honest with you, I enjoy it. But the second thing is it just opens a lot of different doors because it's an interesting way to connect with different people. It fast tracks your way to sort of infiltrate different places. But equally, like all the guys sitting on these panels, you get to meet people in a different way, which makes the business behind it actually a lot easier, because you start off as in a relationship that feels very friendly, it feels very connected, and things we've found fast track.
Wonderful. So Tim says that it's an avenue to network and it's part of your marketing mix, and why not reach your audience through this medium as well, which is growing and which is attracting a lot of audience and which is a good ROI in terms of people listening to it, subscribing to it, and then taking on the marketing messages through it. So I would like to ask this question to Mark, that is this a medium which can be started by a small business owners? I mean, with not a lot of investment and time and in terms of the resources and money, because nowadays there are a lot of tools available in the market which help you produce a show within 15 minutes, and it really takes less of your time to do it. So Mark, please shed some light on it so that small business owners and people who are listening to us today as an individuals as well, they get motivated to start their own channel.
Which Mark did you want to answer that?
Mark, over please.
Oh, okay. So podcasting is a devolved medium. It's one of those that you can actually do in your house, you can do in your office. There's a great opportunity for people to be able to produce some very professional and some really high quality production for podcasting for not a lot of money. So it gives people a really good way of being able to reach large audiences, reach audiences that you wouldn't necessarily immediately link to with geographically or demographically. So it's a great opportunity for people just to get out there. They can do the podcast, they can maybe YouTube it as well and reach a different audience. But it's just a beautiful medium of being able to reach audiences that you wouldn't usually meet.
So wonderful. And let me take this question to Mark Asquith now, is that are there specific topics that usually strike with the people who are who are podcast listeners, or should people find their own niche, the kind of audience they would wish to build over the period of time? I mean, how should people start with?
When it comes to podcasting, there are so many people that just take a format that has already done well for someone else, but there's a reason that format did well for them, and it's because they struck while the iron was hot at a time that was right for them. You can look at any entrepreneur podcast and pretty much steal the format, but it's not going to work. So what you got to do now in 2021 is you've got to find something that, number one, you are completely passionate about, and that's very cliched, but you have to do that because otherwise you become bored of it and it becomes another channel that didn't work for me because I didn't keep it up. So you've got to be really passionate about the thing that you talk about. But the second thing that you've got to do is you've got to find something that's relatively underserved. And Jacqueline's asked a question in the chat, which is very pertinent to that, which we might get to later. But you have to find something that's underserved. So find something that is very, very specific. And of course, you'll be taught to niche in business, in entrepreneurship. The same is true in podcasting. The tighter you can go, the more chance you have of standing out and attracting the right sort of people. So absolutely, you should be focusing on something that, number one, you are passionate about, and number two, is underserved in such a tight niche if you want to use podcasting to grow a business.
So Deanna, tell us about the science of a structure of the podcast. How should it be? Have we worked out in a manner which attracts a lot of audiences and looks well at the end of the day? So what are the branding strategies in terms of branding your podcast, and what should be the structural definition of having a podcast in the post-production phase?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when it comes to branding, it's always like the overall brand should be cohesive with everything that you do. Like if you have multiple components in your business, like make sure that fits into your podcast as well. Because one of the things that I see with some people is like podcast cover or podcast artwork is different than their appearance on social media. And I think it's like, oh, it's awkward to post this artwork because my grid on Instagram is a little bit different. So always keep in mind that you always have that flow and make sure that the brand is cohesive. Choose the fonts, the color. These are like really granular thing, but choose the color and brand colors that fonts that are really in alignment with your brand. Also, when it comes, I think name can be something that is relatable with the brand. Don't be afraid to really speak to that person. Mark was there, like, don't be afraid to speak to that person that you want to connect through your podcast. My podcast is, for example, Fearless and Successful Podcast. I want to connect with people who feel that they are fearless, that that they have that value and they want to break some fears in their business. And it's named to call out those people who are fearless and want to be successful. When it comes to structure, keep in mind that you need to have several points of call to action, always through, and in your intro, in your outro, always call to act, do the call to action, because people forget what they need to do. So in intro, outro, call them to screenshot your podcast or tag you on an Instagram or give you a feedback, whatever that is. Just make sure that call to action is always consistent throughout your show, also in the between.
Okay. And we often do hear that content is the king when it comes to other sorts of digital media and marketing strategies. So, Michael, how do we have any sort of a checklist to make sure that our content is good and it would be consumed well by the audience?
Well, there's a couple of different ways you can measure it, without a doubt, and that is, how long people are actually listening to episodes. So if they start and they drop in the first, 3 minutes, then you're probably not engaging them. And I'd love to share this story, is that, this is the 4th full year of me doing my podcast, but I took 1 full year off because the first 3 years, I didn't know exactly why I was doing it, other than I do, speaking and training, and that it was kind of a different way for me to reach out and be heard to people who might hire me to come, train in their organization or train at their conference. And after a while, I realized that my guests weren't aligned with that. And it was great. I enjoyed it. I met a lot of people. I did get business out of it, without a doubt. But when I took a full year off to say, what am I doing and why am I doing it? Do I even want the podcast? Do I need the podcast? We revamped and we relaunched last year in a whole new format, and then tightened it over the first several months of release. So now we put out 5-day-a-week podcasts. I tape 1 week a month. I have a very specific form that, calls for my guests to follow a format that has basically 1 different question in it every month. The other 3 are all the same, that allow people to promote their business. But from this, it has been so much tighter. My listenership has just gone through the roof. It's allowed us to gain sponsors, because now this was the first year we've actually had sponsors, because now we actually can show traction. But it makes it so much easier on me and my team. And as we put the message out, it's become a really nice pattern that's built and been, tested and retested until we found exactly what we want from it.
Okay. So, Michael, we'll be touching upon these topics again, that how you can get sponsors and cash your podcast and make it really big. But I would like to ask this question to Tim first, that, people are frequently asking us in the chat section that, could you please suggest some resources or the tools which can really help people in terms of researching what sort of podcast they should have, and some tools in terms of how to produce it, and then how to do the post-production tweaks, adding music, adding captions, and all of that stuff. Could you please, take us through the journey of having the tools and the frequently number of tools that you can suggest us, which people can use to make the process easy for them?
Well, that's a big mouthful, Ahmed, but I'll tell you what, I don't even know if I'm the right person to answer, because I give you my philosophy on it. This is how we launched. I grabbed the guy in the business that said, this is what we want to do, and we launched with a podcast a day from day one. That was a major error. Apart from one thing, we fast-tracked our learning years, just having that level of pressure. And when we grow businesses, we do the same thing. Put pressure on, see if we can break it and retrofit. So if you're out there thinking, what sort of podcast should I start? I think it's the wrong question. I agree with Mark totally. You got to want to do this. Like, if no one was listening, I'd still be doing the damn thing, because I enjoy it. And I enjoy speaking to people. And we do a lot of them with my wife, because we run a group of companies, and it's given us an opportunity. It's like our cheap psychological session. We get to talk about things in depth and situations that have come past point. We actually love it. And we enjoy the whole interaction. It's just fun when an audience grows. But in terms of the tools and in terms of all the things and doing that, I think to start with, you've got your basic hardware. You want to sound good, because people, as much as you might be the most interesting person in the world, if it sounds bad, people aren't going to listen. And so we've found that, and there was a small investment at the start, but even that is relatively cheap to start out. In terms of the editing tools and all that, use the greatest library in the world, Google, top 5 2021 resources for editing, and find guys that are just showing you on YouTube. You can learn it 100 times. For me, I wouldn't even know what we use. I think we use Audition and something else, but that's outsourced in my business. The whole point of what I need to do in the business is, are we actually listening, and do we have an audience, and do we have someone that gets enjoyment from this? Where we get feedback of, hey, that insight actually, I was listening in my car, I was doing that. It's like, that's what it's all about. I think a lot of people get so caught up with all this other stuff, which becomes such an easy problem to fix as soon as you're doing something. This sounds crap. What do I do? This needs to sound better. Do this. It's so easy to find. And I'm not sure if that's the answer that your audience wants, but for me it is, make some mistakes, make them quickly, and then double down on them. Not the same mistake, but keep pushing. Because I'm sure, and please, my panelists might be able to share their experience, because maybe mine's not the same. But I found that this is a mistake-driven medium because it's fairly new. Whilst a lot of people are, are starting to find their spot in it, it's like growing any business. You need to push, make mistakes, and make them faster. Sorry, Ahmed, I've lost you. I'm not sure if the rest of the guys have, or I might be sitting here.
I can't hear.
You're muted.
I was on mute. I'm sorry. So I'm sure the audience has taken key insights from how to grow the audience and what all is important when it comes to producing a podcast. But I would still like to take this question to Mark Hayward and ask him to share us some resources and some tools which can be really helpful initially in terms of, getting that kick initially to produce a podcast. And then eventually I'm sure people do research and they do get better at it. And I agree with Tim, initially it's all about making mistakes and making them fast, but still people would like to go ahead with some sort of a research and some sort of a confidence to start with. So Mark Hayward, please share your insights on the resources and the tools that people can use.
Okay, so to tell the story of my podcast, I started about 3.5 years ago, and I started it as a hobby. It was not meant to be a sort of growth business. So I learned how to do everything myself, and so I went right from the starting point. I started using tools like GarageBand and Audacity to record my podcast on. You then get some intro music, some outro music. That there's a website called Pond5, which is great at being able to get some cheap music that you can cut and paste it into your platform for recording. That is basically where you start. And you can then record your intro, your outro, any sort of mid-roll adverts that you can do, all within the software, the recording software. But there's a couple of tips and tools that I've used over the years, which has actually sort of elevated the medium for my podcast. One of them is Euphonic. And that is a tool which actually, when you've got someone that's on a microphone that's quite loud, and then you've got someone that's on a microphone that's quite low, and there's a mismatch between the sound quality, you can actually equalize that through a free piece of software, which is very easy to do. Very easy. It's a really straightforward piece. And that really elevated my podcast. It was something that I wasn't really aware of, but it someone told me about it and I started using it and I thought it was fantastic. You obviously have to think about your hosting platform as well, is critical. I use Buzzsprout. I've used a few over the years. I've used Libsyn as well, but I know that there are good ones out there that are good for using for the hosting platform to distribute to the different podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. So there's some of the tools that I use on a daily basis whenever I record the podcast, just to give people that sort of leg up from the very basics to actually sounding like a professional production of a podcast.
Wonderful. I'm sure you guys have taken note of what Mark Hayward had to mention in terms of the resources and the tools. If not, you can visit us back to watch this entire episode on designhill.com/events. You can find this episode posted there, and you can revisit it and take notes and get started with Mark Hayward. What he shared, it was great set of resources. And what he mentioned was also you can research about sonic branding, which he tried to emphasize on, which lays an importance on how the music and the particular sound and the way it's phased out. It works really well in terms of creating that brand identity in terms of producing a podcast. And I would like to take this question to Mark Asquith, that what is it all about timing? Given the attention time span that is decreasing in today's era of a human being, it's gone less than goldfish. It's People say it's less than 8 seconds now. So I would really like to ask you, what about the hook? How long should the initial hook of a podcast be? Question one, when it comes to timing. And what should be the duration of a podcast that usually works? What is the time width that people should produce their initial podcast initially? And then my third question regarding timing is that what is the time bucket that people usually consume the podcast during? Is it during the driving hours? Is it during the leisure time? Is it during playing sports? Or people dedicatedly listen to podcasts? So what is the time mix there, so that people listening us today can produce their podcast accordingly and keep the audience and the persona in mind while they think about producing it, and who should be consuming it at what time?
Okay, so I am going to say, Mark Harewood, I was just doing this because everyone should host on Captivate.fm, obviously. But I'm just getting that one in there.
Sorry, I didn't plug your business. Sorry.
The founder's a charming man. So yeah, some good questions about timing. There's only one of those that's got a straight answer. The other two are that really vague answer that I can really that's really going to annoy people. But the first question about how long you've got to hook people, you've just got to do it instantly. But the thing is, you've got to keep them hooked. And I've got a lot of free resource on this as well on YouTube. So basically, you've got to give people what they want very, very quickly. So a lot of people will use theme music, and they'll do they'll do all sorts of different themes and have fancy produced music and all that sort of stuff. That's proven simply not to work. In fact, it turns people off. I'm not saying don't have theme music, but you have that underneath a bed of you talking. You don't have the 2011 style, welcome to my new business podcast. No one cares. So what you've got to do is dig in straight away to the thing that you're going to be talking about, okay? As an example, what's better? Some music that's like, welcome to the Mark Asquith podcast about podcasting, teaching you X, Y, and Z. What keeps you interested? That, or what are the top 3 mistakes that you as a new podcaster will make today when you press record? I'm going to tell you those 3 things and 2 more during this 15-minute episode. You can see the clear difference, okay? So that's how you hook people. You have to do it very, very early. When are people listening? There is no data that shows that they are listening in the car, that they're listening in the home, any more than any other medium. If you look at Edison Research and what Triton Digital do, there is no best time that people listen. It's a fallacy. And the fact of the matter is that people don't not listen to audiobooks because it's not a 30-minute commute. If I've got a 10-hour audiobook, I understand how pause works. It's just the same as music and everything. So don't worry about thinking about, well, wait a sec, I can only fill 20 minutes or 40 minutes, okay? Talk for as long as you can until you start repeating yourself, and not in a good educational way. Then do a good edit on it, and that's your final duration. How long should the duration be? Like I just said, it should be as long as it needs to be to remain interesting, entertaining, fun, and educational, adding value all the way through, okay? At that point, when you finish doing all that stuff, that's when you stop the podcast, all right? So it doesn't need to be 15 minutes or 20 or 30 or 40. There is absolutely no data that supports that. So this goes back to what Tim said, and it goes back to what Mark said and what Michael said, and actually what everyone said, which is do the thing that you are good at and talk about the thing that you love. Because then you know when you're waffling, you know when you're repeating, just like this. And I'm going to stop now because I'm doing the same thing.
So wonderful. So Deanna, what are the metrics that podcasters and the listeners and the sponsors should care about? What are the metrics that people should care about while producing a podcast, or while sponsoring a podcast, or while listening to a podcast?
None metrics. No, I'm just kidding. I think it's good to know your numbers. For me, like, that meant from the beginning, from the get-go, when you're starting, obviously, like, you can be discouraged by numbers, because when you are tracking how many downloads, how many listeners, it can be like, oh, only my mom and my brother are listening, and that can be discouraging. So from the get-go, when people who are just starting out, like, don't be discouraged by numbers, but actually what Mark said, providing value and having fun. Guys, we are doing this because it's fun, not because we have to do it, but because we want to like really bring another layer in our business and marketing as well, and giving that value up front. Once you grow your podcast, and probably Mark will be better answering this than me, I think it's like really good to know. I measure, because my podcast is now in 70 different countries, and that's like, for me, and because I'm an international coach, I think that's like really relevant, because then I know, okay, so US and Swedish people, they love to listen to but also those in Kazakhstan. How can I actually adjust these things? Like, maybe there are some cultural things that I want to bring up. Maybe I want to bring people from India, because I have 3% people from India who are listening to my podcast. So maybe that. In terms of like sponsoring, I'm not doing sponsorships yet. But yeah, I think overall, like, be mindful of where you are, and don't compare yourself with these big people. Like, I have 1 million downloads, and so what? Just be there to bring value, and metrics, they're good always in business, but keep your head in a game by just providing value.
That's wonderful. And Michael, I just want to revisit our conversation that we were having about growing the podcast listeners and growing the sponsorships and amounts coming in, making it more such a good revenue model at the end of the day. So I want to ask you this question, that how do you grow your audience, and eventually how do you attract good speakers on your show and attract good sponsors on your show over the period of time? And how do you do it?
Okay, great questions. Number one, if I could go back and do anything differently early on, and I love it when Tim's like, we just put them out there. We made a lot of mistakes. You figure it out as you go along. But what I didn't do the first 3 years before I took the time off to really evaluate was I didn't ensure, or I didn't require my guests to do enough to promote. And that doesn't mean that they have to push it out, but I wasn't capturing all their social media handles and making sure we were connected. And so there are requirements now. Before you get on my calendar, you better be connected with me on LinkedIn. Every once in a while, somebody falls through, or they're not on LinkedIn, which kills me, because that's my biggest following. That's where most of my business happens. But I want to know every social media handle they have. We're going to tag them in all of ours. But then our process of letting them know the day of, and helping them push out, and helping them market, and having my team, because I have a team of 8 behind me that goes on and likes and comments and pushes out. So we're much better at promoting at our end. But we really now seek guests who also are trying to promote themselves, who look at it and say, hey, maybe I have a huge Instagram following, but I'm not that big on LinkedIn. Michael's got 18,000 followers on LinkedIn. Okay, there's an area. I want people that are into promotion themselves. So in order to grow our following, we narrowed down and doubled down on who our guests were. And so now where we are at entrepreneurs that, want to sell something, that want to have a great conversation, that know that, part of the time on my podcast, they're going to get to promote their business, but we're going to do it with whatever series we have. And so now we have great people. So let me just fast forward to answer the other two as quickly, as concisely as possible. Is number one, we got really lucky last fall. And I had a guest on who I knew and who I didn't know was working with a podcast booking agency. And after that, she loved the podcast so much, she went back to them and said, why aren't you sending more of the people that are your clients here? So we currently have at least 10 different podcast booking agencies that send us people. I put 5-day shows a week. We have already booked almost every spot for all of 2021, and we have a waiting list for 2022. Can't believe it. I was going to narrow us down and take us down to 3 days a week. And my podcast manager's like, you're going to kill me. Like, I can't, we have too many people, and they're good people. And that goes into sponsors. So now, in the beginning, I got really concerned about how you had to prove your metrics in order to get the, sponsors at different levels. I said, forget it. I just put a price tag on it, said, here's what it costs to be a sponsor for the month. Here's what we're going to give you. You're going to get a 30 to 60 second commercial in the middle of everyone. You're going to be on the show notes of everybody for that entire month. And we're going to promote you separately. And some of them are paid sponsors, and some of them are affiliate sponsors. So we are moving to more towards, paid sponsors in some areas, but in other cases, affiliate sponsors has turned out to be much more profitable for us in a month. So we've adapted that as we go along, but the sponsors then are truly aligned to know who our listeners are. My last point on this is, prior to me taking a year off, my followers were 80% people that were in mid-level, mid-career sales and leadership positions. Now we are almost 70% entrepreneurs who follow us. Now that shifted happened when we shifted the format, and people who have been on my show love it, so they follow it. Now we have a target audience that I've actually learned how to sell into myself into a different way with my guests. And that's when it's becoming this trifecta of everything that's working together.
That's great. Thank you for sharing those insights, Michael. And now I hope everybody's enjoying this session that we have had. This is the first session of our show tonight. And before we move forward, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Designhill, world's leading creative marketplace, for organizing this event. And let's take a quick short break and keep this interesting conversation going. And once we are back, we'll touch upon more key issues. As of now, we have discussed the issues about initially launching your podcast and growing it, getting sponsors and good speakers, and getting more and more audience listen to your podcast, and having some technological knowledge there, and how to develop a hook and how to do a sonic branding and all of those kind of things. After the break, we'll come back again and take further more issues with all of our panelists. Stay tuned. So welcome back, guys, to the second session and the second part of this panel discussion today. And I would like to start this session by asking a question to Mark Hayward first, that, how to promote and syndicate and distribute your podcast, since we already touched upon a few of the topics about promoting it on social media, adding people on your LinkedIn accounts, and then having a CTAs. So is social media about it, or we have more syndication and distribution and promoting means through which we can get more and more audience listen to our podcasts? Mark Hayward, please go ahead.
Thank you. So for me, on the research that I've seen, there's three areas that you can reach your audience in, and these three are predominantly across any other options. The first one is word of mouth. The second one is social media. And the third one is a website. So to be able to promote your podcast, I think you have to hit all three of those. And I think we're well aware of word of mouth. Tell everyone, tell your friends, family, colleagues, acquaintances, whoever it is, about your podcast. That's just a natural that I think everyone should be doing. The social media is an interesting one. My primary, like Michael, is on LinkedIn. That's where I get most of my traction. That's where I get most of my interest. But to be honest, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, there is a place for all of them to promote your podcast. So I would say don't necessarily stop yourself not promoting on those sites. You can do that relatively easily. But I just want to talk about the Google effect. The website never used to be that important to podcasters, but we've seen over the last year or so that people are now searching for podcasts on Google, which I think is really fascinating, because the search on Apple Podcasts is not great. You can't really do it by filters or anything. So it's not a very good way of being able to search for a podcast on a subject or a type. So people are doing it more and more. They're going onto Google and searching for podcasts through topics, through filters. So I think that's a great way of being able to promote your podcast, and you'll find that the more you publish, it would be great if you were able to publish your podcast, your show notes, maybe a little bit of extra information about the podcaster, the guest that's on your podcast. All these ways are being able to build up your audience and build interest. But I do also think, I just want to go back to social media. I think you should 100% release on the sites that you enjoy being on, because when you start getting interaction and discussion, then you're there able to communicate and be able to share insights, or be able to communicate with, they might be interested in a certain topic or make suggestions. So social media is really important platform for promoting your website, your podcast, because that interaction and that community that you build for your podcast is what's really going to keep the organic growth going. Now, we can all do Facebook ads, we can all do Google ads, and you do get a spike and you do get some increased interest, but that organic growth of being able just to build month by month, building up is so important for your podcast. And I would say, for the people that are listening here, don't always look to get the spikes quickly. Sometimes it's really important to grow it over a period of time and promote and build up a community, because what you want is you want everyone to come to listen to your podcast every week or every day or bi-weekly, how regularly you do it. And you want to build up that community and that interaction that you get through websites or through social media is so important for your podcast and your podcast community.
Okay, wonderful. And I would like to ask this question to Tim, that initially, how do you get people to have a social proof, and how do you get your community to social share your podcast, which initially gets you going in terms of the word of mouth? So how do you really ask people to share your podcast with their friends and family so that you get the initial traction?
Well, I think as Mark said, and I agree totally. I mean, we've got to understand that a podcast, depending on where that sits in your business, if this is your main business and you're actually a media company and you're starting this and want to do it professionally and build up an audience to drive sponsorship dollars, you need to treat it like a business. So like any startup, you start the same way. Friends, family, begging for help, communities, everyone you see to hit them up. I think what Michael said was absolutely spot on too. You start to then refine, once you've got a product, to be able to dictate some different terms. You want to be on my podcast, you need to share, you need to do this. Here's our process. But it's the same format that you would build any business. And I think the trick with an SME or someone here that might be looking at doing a podcast to support their core business, there's a lot of work to do this. This is a highly competitive game, because you need a microphone and a phone and you're off to the races. So we've got low barriers of entry. So you got to understand that everyone here is really good, because they know the game and know the time. And I think to start off, you're going to have to beg, borrow, not steal, but beg, borrow and get that little bit of traction. But my intent, and the thing that I think I've probably learned, and it's not learnt from podcasts, it's probably learned as a philosophy of life. You be good to people. You do the right thing. You be generous with you and supporting others. It's a reciprocity type thing, which is, this is a small community of good people. Now, these guys might look at me, I've never met this guy before, but hey, he might slot into someone who lets me down one day because I think he won't embarrass me, or vice versa. It's like, hey, I don't know any of these guys, but tomorrow I'll get my media guys and go, hey, make sure you give a shout out to them, push them, make sure their podcasts get put there. Why? For no other reason that we're all on this journey together. And I think being a good person in a community and contributing generally fast tracks you in things that come your way. And as I said, this is not our core business, it just happens to be going well because we enjoy it and we've got no agenda. So if that's worked for us, I'd love to hear everyone else's opinions on that. But for me, is be generous with who you are, because generally being a good human, you attract other good humans and you can help get that roll on, particularly in the startup stage where it's damn hard. It's on mute again, Ahmed. Sorry.
So Mark Asquith, would you like to add your comments on that? What Tim just touched upon?
Yeah, definitely. I think the challenge with this is that everyone's doing that, and it's brilliant advice. Don't get me wrong, but podcasting is developed. It's no longer the medium that you can interview people on and expect shares to be enough. That's a sad truth of podcasting in 2021. So I think all that is very valid stuff. But I think a lot of that is now the baseline, whereas before it was the extra mile. It's the old entrepreneur cliche, isn't it? The extra mile is less crowded. Cool. That's nice, but it doesn't really mean anything. So what we've got to do is really understand that Tim has nailed it. This is media. And if you're in content marketing, so if your podcast is something that will help you to market something, Or if your podcast is the product, the marketing doesn't change. It can't change. It's no different, because you're still saying to someone, here's a thing that I want you to invest some time into. And what I want out of it might be different to what the other podcaster wants out of it. But the law of attraction, the prospecting, that's all the same regardless of what you're trying to achieve with it. And that's what's changed, because now there are 2,136,400 and something podcasts. And next week there's going to be 120,000 more. And so that social sharing is fantastic. It needs to exist. That being good to people should be a baseline for life, and that everything that we've said already should just work. However, there are some things that you can do that no one is doing. So the old extra mile cliche, this is the new extra mile for podcasting. And the first thing that you've got to do that no one does is you've got to have a good trailer. And I'm not talking about an episode 0 that used to be taught in 2012 to get into New and Noteworthy. I'm talking about an actual bona fide, well-written 90-second trailer that is marked as such in your podcast host, Captivate, and where you can then embed it onto Twitter. You can embed it onto LinkedIn, because I don't care about your podcast for 45 minutes. It doesn't matter what you tell me you're good at and what your interviewee says they're really good at. My 45 minutes is doing something that I already love. So you got to convince me and give me 90 seconds and curate that podcast trailer in such a way that you say, here's why you should listen, here's where you can listen, it's free, and here is an episode that I would recommend that you get started with. Which episode do you recommend? You go to your analytics in your podcast provider, hosting provider, you look at the highest downloaded one for the last 3 months, and you recommend that one. Send people to that trailer and let them prospect themselves, and that works, all right? The cool thing with that is that Mark Haywood rightly so mentioned that, you've got to be social sharing, you can do paid ads and so on. Well, what if you threw a lot of people to that one trailer? You can do retargeting on that. You can test conversion rates. You can do so much more. So your podcast is a product, even if you use it to sell a product. So I would bear that in mind. There's a lot of people doing the baseline, and if you got to stand out, the baseline's no longer enough, I'm afraid.
Okay, wonderful. So I would like to ask this question to Michael, since she seems to be very good at this in terms of making podcast a good revenue source, apart from using it as a branding tool and a part of a marketing mix. So how do you make podcast a revenue making means for your company or for your brand or for your company, apart from the sponsorship opportunities and the placement opportunities? I mean, are there any other avenues which we can add to the revenue stream for a podcast channel?
Absolutely, but it really depends on your business and what you're trying to accomplish, which we've all been saying. And so originally, when I started my podcast, I was thinking about how I just wanted more people to hire me and buy my books and get me to come in and speak and train. That was kind of my primary objective. Along the way, I realized that the opportunity to interview great guests who might have some interest in other parts of my business was something that I had never capitalized on until this year. And so this is kind of a tough one to say, but think of it this way. So for 1 week a month, I tape an entire month's worth of episodes. So I have between 20 and 24 hours of taping for a month's worth of podcasts. And in that, I have narrowed it down to 20 to 24 people that are possible consumers of at least one portion of my business. And during that hour, now we don't tape the whole time, I get to talk to them, I get to meet them, I get to know them, I enjoy them, they enjoy me, they have a great experience. And next thing you know, we're talking about different ways that our businesses might work together or ways they might benefit. And let me give you one example. We actually have a second company, which is a placement company. My whole team is from Kenya. And so my whole team is amazing. They're amazing people. And because of other small business owners like me, people kept saying, well, Michael, as I'm interviewing them for my podcast, Michael, how do I find somebody like Josie, who's your podcast manager, or Lorna, who's your marketing manager? And I'm like, I think there's another business here. And so in that hour-long conversation, I can't tell you how many of them have ended up becoming clients of Kukwa Biz, which is our name of our other company, because they not only had a great opportunity with me to talk and get to know me get to know them, but they understood that I knew their business too and what their pain points were. So when you really think about the podcast, I do it because I love it. My husband said, why don't you go down to 3 days a week instead of 5 so you're not crazy 1 week a month? And I said, because I can't. I really love it. I'd love to have a few more hours a day, but you can't ask for a better opportunity than 20 to 24 qualified hours of time in front of your potential clients or potential business partners than doing this and having a truly authentic conversation. So if there's a part of your business that you can benefit from, it's an amazing opportunity. You just have to take it to capitalize on it.
That's wonderful. And Diana, I would like to take this question to you from the audience who have asked us in the question section is it okay to just have the podcast hosted on one platform, or should we have multiple? Since I think you are the right person to answer for this, since your podcast is listened to in multiple countries. So what do you have to say to Monica here?
If the question is on a hosting platform, then that just one platform that you host your podcast. But we actually stream on 9 different platforms throughout the hosting platform. So yeah, I think it also depends where your listeners are at. For us, it's Apple Podcasts that it's ranking the most. Like, so we are pushing Apple Podcasts all of the time, and also Spotify. Like, I'm in Sweden, so Spotify is our thing. So yeah, definitely make sure that you are doing the thing that are, like Mark said, like go back to the analytics and check where your podcast is performing the best.
Okay. And what checklist should people follow when posting their podcast in terms of the copy and the content they do, apart from having the CT at the end of the day? So end of the content. So what should be the structure of the content that should come up with the podcast in terms of the promotion? Is there any structure there?
Are you asking me?
Yes, Diana.
Yeah. So in terms of promotion, so for us, we don't have for us there is no structure, but like the description is always the same. Like, we feature and we interview people and we want to spotlight them. And it's like, okay, so who is this person? Why is it this relevant for you to listen? And then, of course, the things that they said, like just a little nuggets of the show, so it's interesting, and their call to action. I don't promote my things on my podcast. That it's really, for me, important that I interview people and that I spotlight them. And going back to the promotional parts, I think it's very important to mention that these kind of events are a great marketing tool to actually promote your podcast. So I think that speaking on other people's events, speaking on even like different virtual stages right now, it's a thing where you can promote your podcast as well, not just social media, website, of course, but also these kind of events.
Thank you so much, Diana, for your insights here. And thank you so much, everybody, for being present here today. I wish and hope we could have touched more issues today, which our audience had asked for, and they're continuously asking us in the questions section. But there's always second time in doing it again in the future. So before we wrap this up, I would like to ask everybody to share your final messages for the audience who watched it today live, and for the people who are going to watch it later on our official YouTube channel and our events page. So I'll start with Tim.
I think for anything from our experience is understand where podcasting sits in your personal ecosystem, where it sits with your business and what you want to do. But look at it and start with the intention that you want to do it, because as Mark said, that you got to really love it, because if you enjoy the medium, you're going to want to keep digging in and master it more. And when you start doing that, you're probably starting right on the right foot. So good luck for everyone, particularly all the SMEs out here, which I know very well. Good luck with it. Have a go. It's fun.
Thanks, Tim. Mark Asquith, please.
Yeah, I echo Tim's sentiments. Be passionate about the thing that you're talking about, and you won't go wrong. But remember as well, this is the one thing that many podcasters get wrong. This show is your show. The old tropes of podcasting, largely, again, they've changed because podcasting is more mainstream now. This is your show. Don't put other people front and center. You're building your influence, and that's what you're intending to do with this thing. So try and just balance that out, okay? And Jacqueline just asked a question that we've not got, so I'm going to answer it in one sentence. Be the person in your area, Jacqueline, that educates on what podcasts are, and then you become the expert. So that's my tip.
Thanks, Mark. Michael, please go ahead.
I think just overall, make sure that you're evaluating, so look to make sure it's, it's doing what you want it to do. And if it's not, then evaluate where you can change and adapt. It doesn't have to be perfect, especially in the beginning. And I'll tell you, the smartest thing I did was take one whole complete year off. I mean, it's hard because you lose momentum. People were following you. But at the same time, I came back stronger when I had a much clearer vision about what I wanted to achieve with it, why I wanted to achieve it, and how I was going to measure it. And as we see that happening now, it's a great end result. But you're going to make some mistakes along the way. Doesn't matter. That's okay. Just learn from them.
Great. Mark Hayward, please.
I think for me, it's whoever's listening here at the moment or watching, and you can actually do it. It's still a medium where there's not a huge barrier of entry. You can get a microphone, you can get a laptop, you could do it on your phone. You don't have to do it professionally. The better quality, it will get better audiences. But I want everyone to be enabled that you can actually go out there and you can actually do this and produce a really high quality podcast with great guests, with great stories, with golden nuggets, and anyone can do it.
Thanks, Mark. Diana, please.
I think Mark really raised the bar for us with the trailer. So I think that it's really important that, guys, make sure that you are doing what you do best and outsource the rest. Like, don't get stuck with the things that are like, there are so many components in production, and Tim mentioned that, like, just outsource the thing that you are not there to do. You are there to speak, to provide value. All the rest, like, outsource.
So thank you so much, guys, for being here today. Tim, Mark, Michael, Mark Hayward, and Diana, thank you so much for your insights today. I'm sure the audience has loved it, given the sort of the engagement that we're having in the chat and questions section. I'm sure people are going to love it on while watching it on our YouTube channel. And I would ask people to revisit these bites and the conversations that we have had today, and take notes and get started with it. And we have also shared the social handles of our panelists here today in the chat section. You can go and subscribe to their channels and listen to their podcast, be a frequent listeners, and go ahead and like them on the social media pages and follow them for their insights. You can also message them. They'll be, really happy to get back to you with more questions that you might have. So this is not the end of it. We have more events like these lined up for you in the coming days. So if you guys are interested and haven't registered yet, I'm putting the links of our event section in the chat section, where you can find all of our upcoming events and register. And to stay updated with events like these, you can follow us on our LinkedIn page, which I'm putting this link in the chat section again. And to watch this again, I mentioned you can visit our official YouTube channel and our designhill.com/events page after 3 days. And for all the business owners who are listening to this today and wish to source high quality graphic designs and build their brand starting today, be it podcast or any other brand they would like to build, visit www.designhill.com. And also, we have recently launched a DIY creative tool for podcasters like you. It's called Designhill Studio, where you can easily pick and drop. It's a DIY tool. You can create any stuff for the promotion that you might need, for all the social media posts and banners that you might need, or for any other channel that you might need to create them. So lastly, you can follow all our speakers on Twitter and LinkedIn to learn more. I have dropped the link of them in the chat section. And if you want to build your brand, use a coupon code put in the chat section here to avail 15% discount. So on that note, I would like to say bye to everyone who joined us here today. Take care, guys, and stay safe. Bye-bye.